So this is the first session of a series of sessions that are supposed to help us align and make sense of where we're headed in general as humanity, and then what that means for us individually and as a group. Okay, so we want to be very, very aligned. If you don't mind, I'm going to mute all of you. Please unmute yourself if you want to say something, but that way the recording is a bit more quiet. Okay, so this is a extremely wide topic, of course, right? So what's the state of humanity? Where do we need to go? What's our role in it? And what's the role of our group? And this, in my view, has to start with the individual. And there's a reason for that. And I want to describe that reason by something that happened in about 200, 150 years ago in Europe. So around the time of Goethe and Schiller, those poets and polymaths, it became clear in the sense that there was some feeling in the air that something was about to massively change. At the time, Europe was dominated by monarchies, and somehow it was felt that that was fading away, but it wasn't clear where it was going. And it's a bit, in that sense, comparable to today. It's not clear where it's going. We know it's changing, but we don't know where it's going. And in the salons of Goethe, Schiller, and others, they pondered that question. What do we do with this? And they concluded that strong individuals would be needed. Grounded, strong individuals that were capable of navigating the uncertainty of that future. So far, so good. So then the next question, the next obvious question is, how do we get grounded and strong people? And their response was, let's have something that today, they called it differently, but today is a meditation retreat. Then 1848 happened. And in Germany, revolution and disruptions. So that idea never happened in Germany. But the idea moved to Denmark. And the Danish people made it possible 150 years ago for 10% of the young population to spend, I think, up to half a year grounding themselves. So being in a thing they called Volksschule at a young adult age, around 18, without any obligations, just being, just having a space for exploration and understanding and learning and exchange. It still happens today. And 10% of a population is sufficient for societal change. The numbers are discussed and vary, but apparently somewhere between 3 and 10% of the population are enough to shift the societal perspective. From Denmark, that moved to the other Nordic countries. Norway, Finland, Sweden, they all did that and still are doing that. It's all documented in Thomas Björkman's book and Lena Andersson's book, The Nordic Secret. So the European Nordic countries are doing something fundamentally different from other countries, and that's that. They're So it starts with the individual, right? You are better capable of navigating an uncertain future if you are grounded. Now the question is, how do you get grounded? Um, and this, I would like to begin that groundedness journey with Daniel Kahneman. Maybe you're aware of Daniel Kahneman. He's a social psychologist from Israel. He received a Nobel Prize for Economics about 20 years ago, or something, and he wrote a book about the findings that led to his Nobel Prize called Thinking Fast and Slow. And what he differentiates is system one and system two in our thinking. These are not located um, physiologically, or not easy to locate physiologically. You could say that system two is part of the prefrontal cortex, but let's not get distracted by that. System one is defined as the really fast responding part of your mind that allows you to catch a ball, that allows you to break in the street if a child runs into the street, that allows you to all sorts of things that are very, very quick. And the majority of your decisions in your day are led by system one. Our system two is the most metabolically expensive part of you. And that's why your brain doesn't like using it. The system two makes planning decisions, structuring decisions. It tries to make sense of the world. That's system two is what you think of when you think of me, when you think I, me, yourself, usually. Now, the problem with that is that the configuration of your system one is more or less finished at a very early age, around 7. And the contents are not easily accessible. So in order to change our behavior in the world and change our actions in the world so that they align with something positive we want to create in the world, we somehow need to manage to rewrite the contents of our system one so that they fit our purpose. And that requires a bunch of things. That requires, first of all, that you're very, very clear about the positive thing you want to create, the world you want to create. That's a hard thing in itself. And we're going to explore how that can be achieved. It's important to do that because that then allows you to define who you are in that world and what the actions are for that person in that world, so that you can use that to refill your system one with new heuristics and ideas, but on your own terms, not on the terms of the people that did that for you in the first place. Now, the next thing that needs to be done is to get some of the get access to the contents of your system one. Now that is very hard because it's what we colloquially call our subconscious, right? It is exactly that. It's not accessible easily. So the next thing we need is a tool to get access to that, so that we can decide, okay, what are parts of that I actually want and need, and what are parts that I don't want that I can replace with new stuff. And that's an ongoing process. That's not something that um, ever ends. And another really important thing I want to mention here is this all can be used for sinister causes if you are want to be a cult, right? So if somebody ever comes to you and tells you to um, build a certain future and you have to rewrite your system one to be part of that certain of that specific future, don't trust that person, right? Because that person is probably going to use you for some personal purpose, right? That's so it's crucially important that you come up with your own version of that good future. Crucially important, right? So I will never I will present my version, but I will never demand of you to accept that version. Um, but what I want to give you is a way to get closer in your articulation of that desired future for yourself. Right? That's what we're going to do. And I do this because I have a deep trust that our overlap between between our futures is enormous, probably close to 100%. And so I'm going to go into process now. How's that actually done? And um, what I offer here is just process that has worked for me, but I know it has worked for many other people as well because I've helped guide many people through that process as well. Many meaning hundreds. So I know it can work. So the first thing to do is describe your dream future. And this can feel really weird, and it should, in the first instance at least, be private. Right? This is something you write for yourself, and you don't have to share it. You can share it, but it feels weird if you're really opening up about the dream of your future. And if you want to get some inspiration of a really courageous guy who did that in 1932, you can search for Winston Churchill's article called 50 Years Hence. So in 1932, he wrote down what he thinks thought 1982 might look like. And he came up with the weirdest pictures. And in different shapes and forms, many of these pictures actually came true. Right? Different than from his pictures. For example, he was imagining we're growing chicken parts on shelves in cellars run by solar energy, but we're not actually that far away from that, right? So what I can offer, and I'm going to share a link to that as well, is 7 questions that reflect 360 degrees of what humans do individually and in groups. There is overlap, but if you answer each of those questions for yourself, you have a good chance that you've touched on a 360-degree view of the world. Why is that important? You might have an education in background in education, and then it is very tempting to use education as the lever for looking at the world and changing the world and all of it. That's good and might be right. But you might be missing out on questions around where does the food come from? How do we get shelter, right? That's not automatically linked to education. Right? So we want to at least look into all of these areas. The questions are very abstract. and they're abstract on purpose. I want to describe this with the second of these questions. The level of abstraction and also the reason for the abstraction. The first one is pretty obvious. The first one is about supply. So how do we source stuff? How do we refine it into something usable? And how do we distribute it? And how do we do all of this in a regenerative way? And how do we do all of this in a way that we also create buffers for emergency situations and future generations? Right? So that's question number one. And here you can already see that this is you can answer this question by describing our current economic system, if you like, right? But you can also replace it with something else, right? This is why that question doesn't contain words like industry or companies or the economy, but is on a very abstract level so that you can really describe it how you would dream it up. And then I mean dream. So you just got a beautiful planet for your birthday, and you can come up with the way the human civilization will live on this planet. And once you're done describing that, you will get 8 billion people to do that. Okay, that's the frame of mind that you're in. Okay, question number 2 is about signaling capacity. Right. So what does signaling capacity mean? Today, in at least roughly half of the countries in the world, we have 2 signals that we can send as an individual. One is by spending money. Spending money is a signal, right? We can buy this product and not that other product, and that's a signal of some sort. And we can sometimes vote. That's the second signal. And the reason why, again, this is so abstract, it's about signaling capacity, not about, okay, what forms of money do we use, or do we use money, or I don't care, right? I really don't care. We can use money, but we can also do it without. We can use votes, but we can also do it without. We can use all sorts of things. And I don't want to say any things because I don't want to create a bias, right? But there are many, many forms we can show the world and listen to the world and send and receive signals about what needs to be done or not be done. Okay, that's what that question is about. The third question is about governance, right? So how does it happen that we come up with rules for ourselves, for societies, locally, regionally, and globally? How does it happen? How is that authorized? And how is that enforced? Right? Again, detach from any way we do this right now. Because if you start looking into the actual original forms of democracy in ancient Athens, you'll be surprised. They did not vote. They were chosen by a lottery. There was no voting. And that breaks our concepts of democracy, right? Maybe we can think about democracy in a different way. That's okay, governance. Then how do we manage knowledge? What is that actually? How do we agree on what is knowledge and what is not knowledge? Are there maybe different dimensions to that? Right? And then how do we spread it? How do we spread it in a way that it maintains integrity across time and space? Huge questions, I know, but very helpful to think about that. Next question is, how do we relate to people? Right? Currently, we put ourselves into groups. We call those groups families or governments or companies or whatever. Might be cool, might be useful, but it also might not. So let's find that out, right? So let's see how we put ourselves into a relationship with other people and why, and how's that done. Next one is about nurturing the body. So how do we create healthy bodies? How do we maintain that health? And how do we restore it if it breaks down? And the final question is about how do we ensure the continuous growth and expansion of the I like to call it the spiritual side. The question actually formulates it better, but I can't remember it right now. Let me pull it up so that I can actually do this. Just this 1 second. Yeah. So number 7 is, how do we cultivate conditions for individuals to develop a strong and evolving sense of coherence within themselves? And this includes the capacity to make sense of the world, capacity to take action and purpose beyond the individual. All right, so that's what we do, right? That's number 1. We answer these questions for ourselves, and we can also open discussions with other people, right? We can engage in shared sense making around this. But this will sharpen what you want to do in the world in order to get there, right? In order to start contributing to that world. And that's exactly the next step. Thinking about, how do you want to define your role in this? Right? There's an exercise called Ikigai. There's a popularized downstrip version of that concept, which comes from Japan, that works as 4 overlapping circles. So, and it asks 4 questions. What does the world need? Right. So that's the bridge from here now to there, then to your vision. What does the world need? What am I good at? What can I do? Right. That's not what can I get paid for? Right. That's the third question. What can I get paid for? And the fourth question is, what do I love? Right. That's also not necessarily what do I get paid for or what am I good at. But if you bring all of these together, then you start developing something that is coherent between all 4, and then obviously also in alignment with the overall vision of the world that you have. So now you have a better understanding of where to go, what your role is. Now you have to put it into your subconscious or into your system 1. And there are 2 things you need to do this. You have to find a way to make the things that you want, the ways you want to act, the ways you want to be, the world you want to see, continuously present for yourself. There are several ways to do this. The way I like doing this is writing it on my kitchen wall, right? So that every time I do the dishes or cook, I see these things. And after a year or 2, and that's how long this can take, they start becoming me, right? These things on the wall. I can put it on the background on my phone, for example, or my computer. So I see it every time I look at my phone, I see this. I can create a mantra and do a meditation in the morning around that mantra, right? Things like that. But repetition is key. We have to maximize for repetition, optimize for maximization of repetition somehow. Put it on the mirror in the bathroom, anywhere, right? Also, Diana pointed that out earlier, embodiment helps, right? So what I like doing as well is attaching in my mind, attaching these thoughts to a physical object that I wear, like a bracelet. Because that subconsciously reminds you of that these ideas all day, every day. And so you can create your own prayer, like your own mantra. You do that in the morning with a bracelet in your hands, consciously charging that bracelet with your ideas and putting that on. Right? And again, super important. If I told you what to put on that bracelet, you should refuse it. Right? It has to come from you, only you. Okay, and then you also have to make some space for that new content in your system one. How do you do that? According to several people, but I like using Gabor Mate for this, that we come to this world with two basic needs. One is the need for attachment, so we know who cares for us as an infant, as a baby, and the need for authentic expression, because we need to signal to that person or those people that we need to be cared for. Now, our expression, our modes of expression are limited in our first year or so, so that to just screaming, right? Basically, we're crying, and that can mean a whole range of things, and it conflicts with the reality of life of those people that we have attachment to, and we're very, very fine tuned to that. So the example Gabor Mate likes to tell is from his own first year of life, which happens to be in Budapest as the Nazis invaded. And for some reason, he was crying nonstop, and his mother was worried. And so she called the doctor, and the doctor said, well, yeah, I can come and look at your child, but really, all Jewish children are crying right now. And what he's trying to say with that is how sensitive we are to the disposition of those close to us. Right? Your stressed mother makes you cry. Right? So we subdue our authentic expression or our need for authentic expression very, very quickly because we're afraid of the circumstances, of the environment. We need to protect the need for attachment. And so that's a lot of muck in our system one that we want to get out, right? We want to make some space for some good stuff there, right? The good stuff that helps us be who we want to be and build the world we want to build. Now, how do we do that? We allow ourselves a space to be truly authentic for the first time since you were 3 years old. And that space happens only between you and yourself. So you take a piece of paper and you start writing. You start writing whatever comes up. And the more intense it makes you feel, either in a positive or in a negative way, the better. And then follow that. That's an opening into your subconscious. Follow that feeling. and really dig deep, understand where that comes from, what's driving this. And write it all down. Take half an hour, something like that. And once you've written it, you burn it. No one should ever see what you've written because it's just between you and you. What that does is it, for the first time, allows you to articulate things that are in your subconscious because you are allowed to engage in authentic expression without any limitations because nobody will ever interfere or know about this. And you do that for 2 weeks, maybe 3, for however long you want, whenever you want. And I do this every time I notice that I have trouble sleeping, because then I know something is nagging me. So as I just sit down, I start offloading, and then I can immediately sleep, right? And that creates space. And with the added repetition of the things you actually want there, that's when you start acting in the way you want, because you're now closing the loop, the feedback loop between your system 2 that wants to be in the world in a specific way in a certain world, and your system 1 that just acts, right? That just makes 95% of your decisions every day. And now you start being fully aligned with what you want to do. Okay. So all of that could end up in a cult or a religion if I were to tell you what's to do. I'm just giving the process, and the content is fully yours. Okay. That's basically end of session.